I just love this plant. It's strong, it's low maintenance, it doesn't really need constant attention, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it honestly seems to put up with pretty much anything I throw at it. It really is like the perfect relationship almost. Actually, hey babe, can you come here a sec? I want to introduce you to a plant. If you're looking for a plant relationship that actually works, this might be exactly the plant that you need. Hi, if we haven't met before, my name is Angie, and this ZZ plant has been a part of my plant collection for almost the time that I've been collecting plants, so at least 5 or 6 years, and it's probably been, or has been, I guess, the most reliable plant through my entire collection. There's other plants that have been quite drama queens and a bit dramatic, especially this winter. It seems to have been a very cold and wet winter, and a lot of plants have been throwing tantrums, but this one just keeps thriving. So today, I just want to take you through how to get really positive results with your beautiful ZZ plant. So this is the ZZ plant, as I've said. The actual name, I'm probably going to butcher it, apologies, but it is the Zamiifolia. I'm sure there's a better way to say that. It's also known as the Zanzibar gem, and it originates from Eastern Africa. So when they're in their actual homeland, they're dealing with some pretty tough, rugged conditions, right? They're in drought, they're in intense heat. There's obviously not a lot of water around. And so they've evolved to be absolute survivors. And not only do they look beautiful, but they're also very unique. And there's something really special about this plant that you may not realize. If you have a look at the way that it's built, if you have a look at the leaves, you can feel them, and they're quite thick and they're quite waxy as well. That's not just for looks, although it is beautiful. Those thick leaves are actually holding a lot of water in them. And then if you go straight underneath into the soil, they have these, they look like potatoes. They're like potato-like storage systems. They're called rhizomes, and they also work like water tanks. So this plant has created a survival system that makes them so reliable, but it's also why so many people get their care completely wrong. And I'm going to show you today exactly how to get it right, including I'm going to give you one game-changing tip, I promise, that actually works for every plant you'll ever buy. But more on that a little bit later. You have to wait for that one. So when it comes to the ZZ plant, the Zanzibar gem, there are actually a few different varieties that you can get of this plant now. This is the classic green ZZ plant, but you can also get darker varieties like the Raven ZZ with those dramatic, really dark purple-black leaves if you've ever seen them. The new growth comes out lime green, but then it gradually darkens to this beautiful darker color. It's like watching plant magic happen. It's almost like one of those color-changing t-shirts from the 90s. Gosh, it's showing how old I am. Never had one. Actually, did I? I probably did. Anyway, I digress. That doesn't matter. Anyway, so there's the dark Raven ZZ. There's also a smaller, cute little compact ZZ plant. They have cute little curly leaves, and they're perfect if you don't have heaps of space. You can see here, this is a good medium-sized plant. There's also a chameleon variety, and that changes from lime green to dark green, I think it is. And then there is actually one more ZZ that I know of, and this is one I actually have on my wish list, and it is the holy grail almost of ZZ plants in my mind. And it is a gorgeous variegated ZZ. So like a white and green, gorgeous variegated ZZ with creamy white markings. I'm definitely keeping an eye out for one of those, although they probably won't hit Australia anytime soon, knowing how Australian standards are. But that's okay. I'm going to get it when it comes over. Here's one thing you really do need to know about ZZ plants, and it's the number one way that they die, that people kill them, and that is honestly with kindness. Specifically, admittedly, it's overwatering. As with most plants, I would say the telltale sign is yellow leaves, but here's the key. It'll happen to the entire stems as well, not just the leaves or not just random leaves. The yellow stem, when you see that, it's basically the plant saying, help, I'm drowning. If you see this happening, don't panic, honestly, but you got to act quickly. So you got to get some really clean scissors, make sure you get some isopropyl or alcohol and really sterilize those scissors, because you're going to cut the stem off at the base, cut the whole yellow stem off, the whole thing off, get rid of it. It's not going to grow again. And you can then give this plant the energy back to growing into the healthy leaves. So I know there's a lot of people who say that ZZ plants are perfect beginner plants, but honestly, I think that's a little bit of a myth. I didn't think they were that easy when I first started out, and I think there's a lot easier, more forgiving plants out there. The golden pothos, which is right behind me, that's a much more forgiving beginner plant. I think spider plants are easier. Anyway, there's others out there. But the problem there is that when people hear it as an easy plant, they water them just like a regular plant, like you would with your pothos or your philodendron. but they're not a regular houseplant. As I said at the beginning, they're survivors, right? They're drought survivors. So they have a very different watering schedule. And there's actually a really simple way to know how to water any plant correctly. This is my tip. I know it's coming, which I'll share with you in a minute, I promise. But you've got to wait for that a little bit more. Do you own a ZZ plant? Do you have one on your wish list like I do? Which variety is on your wish list? Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments right now while you're thinking about it. So what does a thriving ZZ plant look like? Well, what you do want to see is consistent new growth. I have one, where is it? I can't see it. There it is. I have one right here. I'll show you a close up, obviously. And it is the end of winter here in Australia, and it's still giving me beautiful growths. It has these lighter green shoots coming up, and that is just your plant telling you that it's genuinely happy. It's not just surviving, but it's thriving in its condition. If they're getting dull or droopy, that usually means there's too much water or not enough light, or maybe a little bit of both. And because they're quite waxy leaves, they do need a wipe down with a damp cloth or a little bit of neem oil every few months. It's probably a good thing to get into regularly with all your plants, is to give them a clean, because dust will block light absorption, and that then blocks them making the most amount of energy from photosynthesis. And honestly, clean leaves just look a little bit better too. Plus, anyone like me who has dogs, especially 2 Labradors, will understand the hair thing, the dog hair thing. Oh my God, it's like everywhere. I can still see it on this plant. So definitely the hair and the dust gets everywhere. So I am constantly checking and wiping down because of that as well. But anyway, my point is, do keep your leaves clean, especially on this plant, but on most plants if you can. And did you actually know that ZZ plants can actually flower? I have actually had this baby flower before. I've had it flower once before, and it is pretty rare, but if it does flower, it has some small, very subtle flowers. They're very cute. They're very adorable. They'll come out as like another little stem growth, but they've got flowers on them. But honestly, I think if you're going to buy a ZZ plant, you buy it for the foliage, the thick, the unique, waxy, beautiful, full, chunky foliage, and, just looking full and luscious and gorgeous. Okay, so the question now is, how do you get this baby to stay gorgeous? Okay, first up, let's talk about lighting. Now, because this affects everything about this plant, right? ZZ plants are incredibly adaptable, especially when it comes to different lighting conditions. In their natural habitat in Eastern Africa, they get everything. They get bright filtered light, they get some pretty deep shade, and so they've learnt to grow up in a rugged, tough condition, and they've learnt to be pretty flexible as well. So you can definitely have one of these plants in a lower light corner. They are recommended as low light plants. They're actually pretty good for a low light corner. But if you want your plant to really thrive and to really grow in its spot, then medium to bright indirect light is going to be your sweet spot for this plant. Mine's in a medium spot, but it's not in a low light. I want mine to keep growing and keep giving me new leaves and new stems. If it's in a low light constantly, it will still be okay. You just may not get new growth as often. And definitely don't put it in absolute direct sunlight. It might have grown up in rugged conditions, but it's not a cactus, okay? That's probably the one thing you want to avoid with this plant. Direct sun can scorch the beautiful leaves. They're very waxy, and you'll get brown edges, crispy edges. It just won't be nice. So if you're in Australia like me, a south or east facing window works beautifully. Opposite, obviously, for my northern hemisphere plant lovers up there. But just pull it back from the window a bit, like this one here, so it's not getting harsh direct light. Now, when it comes to soil, this is really important, as I said, because of all that water holding. You really want something that drains really, really well. Yeah, I have my beautiful, see, dog hair. I actually use my arrowroot mix here for my ZZ plant, and it works absolutely perfectly because it's really drainy, but it also holds a little bit of moisture for a long time. I'll link my arrowroot mix video below if you want to see exactly how I make it, but it is a perfect mix for this plant with really good drainage. If you don't want to use an arrowroot mix, you can actually use a really good quality cactus mix if it's easier to find. Or if you're mixing your own, just make sure there's a lot of aeration elements in there, like perlite or pumice or orchid bark or cocoa chunks. The key is just good drainage. For pots, I actually recommend plastic or terracotta, to be honest. This one is in a plastic inner pot. Let me see if I can pick this up. There we go. Yep. So it's plastic inner pot and just a nice decorative outer pot. She's doing quite well. She's loving life. If you are an over-waterer, then terracotta actually might be your best friend because it helps wick away moisture from the plant. And a small tip for these plants is they actually like being a bit snug in their pots. Not completely root bound, but lots of roots in that pot. They only need repotting every few years. I actually can't remember the last time I repotted this one, but it's been at least 3 years. But she's still growing and she's not completely root bound yet. So she's staying where she is. She's happy for me right now. And she's not going to have a repot for at least probably another 6 to 12 months at least that I can think of. Now, if you're loving a ZZ plant as much as I am, you might be interested in propagating. So how do you make more of these beauties? Well, there's actually 3 ways you can do it. The easiest way is just division. You're literally just splitting the plant up from the base. You can just gently separate those potato rhizomes. You've got to be a little bit careful not to break them, and you just get multiple plants for free doing it that way by division. You can also cut it by stem. You could just pop a cutting in new soil or water or something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to have the rhizome on it. It will grow a new rhizome. That's how I've done it a few times. And you can actually also grow this one by the leaf, but you have to have the patience of a saint when you're trying to grow a leaf cutting. Honestly, it just takes forever, but it is possible. You just need to manage your expectations. This isn't propagating like a pothos or something. They are slow. And actually, speaking of slow, one thing I haven't mentioned yet is whilst you are looking for growth when you've got a healthy plant, it is very slow growth. This isn't a normal vining plant. As long as you're seeing a little bit of new growth or consistency here and there, consistent growth, then your plant is very, very happy. But it is a very, very slow specimen. It's very tough. It's got some nice, thick, juicy stems and leaves and rhizomes. There's a lot of energy that has to go into that plant when it's growing. So it is one of the slower plants in terms of growth. But I think that's great for smaller homes because it doesn't take over your whole apartment like in 5 months, which other plants can do. So don't judge your plant parent skills based on how fast this little baby is growing. Slow and steady wins the ZZ plant race or pace in this sense. Beautiful plant, but it is a little bit of a slow grower. Okay, so we've covered light and soil, but here comes the game changer. And this doesn't just apply to ZZ plants, it applies to any plant you ever buy, but super easy to showcase on this beautiful ZZ. So I want to give you this huge, amazing tip. You ready? So you need to check how thick or thin your plant is. The leaves, the stems, and the roots. In this case, this ZZ plant, if you really do feel how thick the leaves are, especially after you've just given it a good water, they're actually quite thick, which means they're holding quite a bit of water in those leaves. If you look at the stems, I mean, this stem is much thicker than my fingers, right? It's really thick, big, chunky. And again, those stems are actually holding quite a bit of water. And then the ZZ plants, as I mentioned at the beginning, have these amazing underground, they're called rhizomes, and they look like potatoes, and their job is also storing water. So for this ZZ, we have 3 points of water storage. Water in the leaves, water in the stems, and then water in those potatoes, in the rhizomes. So if you then compare that to another plant, let's go the opposite way, and let's compare it to a maidenhair fern. A maidenhair fern is a plant that needs consistent water. And that is because they are so dainty and thin and fine. They have absolutely, well, pretty much no water storage. So they constantly need water topping up. So have a pause right now and think about the plants that you have at home, right? Do they have thick leaves or thin leaves? I bet you're already thinking some aha moments in this one. I love a good aha moment. Let me know in the comments what plants you're realizing about. Think about the plants you have. The ones with thicker stems, thicker leaves, they hold a lot of water. They probably need less watering and vice versa. How cool is that, huh? I love nature. I love finding those little tidbits of nature. Plants are amazing. Anyway, actually, if you're loving this tip and you want more tips and tricks and a bit of fun, it's a great time to mention to come and join my newsletter. It's called the Leafy Lounge, and it's just a weekly email I send out every Thursday, and it's perfect for plant lovers. I'll leave a link in the description in the show notes below, and you can check it out for yourself at any time, but come and join and have a bit of fun. So when it comes to me watering my ZZ, because of all the things I just mentioned, I can let the soil get completely dry. Not just the surface dry, not just drying it out 75%, but properly dry out all the way. I let it dry, and then I even wait a couple more days, and then I'll water it. If you need to use a moisture meter, I have an amazing moisture meter, and I wait till not only says dry, but dry plus. Like it's got to be thoroughly, 100% no water in that soil mix throughout the entire pot. And then when I do water, I give it a really good, thorough drink and soak. I really want to get all of that soil mix damp so it will get to hold water. I let the excess water run out the base of the plant. I don't let it sit in any excess water more than 30 minutes. I know it's damp, and then again, I wait until it dries out completely again. If you've got one of those moisture meters that has numbers, get it to a 1. Make sure yours is to a 1, even to a 0. That's personally why I don't really like the moisture meter with the numbers. I'm going to share the one that I use. It's got normal, wet, dry, and dry plus. It's so easy to understand. It's much more easier than the numbers. So I do recommend this one water meter. If you want to give it a try, it's up to you. But again, just make sure it's super, super dry before you water it again. Honestly, in winter, sometimes I don't even water this plant for a month. Maybe a month, maybe every 3 weeks minimum or maximum. Anyway, you know what I mean. I don't know which one it is, one of those. And then alongside the watering, I fertilize it often enough, maybe every second watering. It's always a diluted down fertilizer. I don't give it too much fertilizer, especially because if you're drying out the soil mix, you can easily burn the roots with too strong fertilizer. So I'm always using 50 to 75% fertilizer instructions max. And I'll use a liquid fertilizer, and maybe when I'm watering, every second watering, I'll do it. But that's fairly common for most of my plants. I like a diluted amount of fertilizer, so I'm not burning my plant roots at all with too much fertilizer. Honestly, this thick versus thin plant leaf stem rule works for pretty much all plants that I can think of. Thick leaves like succulents, rubber plants, even some Hoyas, they have less frequent watering needs. Thin leaves like pothos, ferns, calatheas, more regular watering. That makes sense, right? And honestly, this is why I think the golden pothos or the spider plants are a better beginner plant than the ZZ plant. But once you understand this rule about watering, the ZZ plant will become an easy plant for you too, I promise you. Also remember, this tip is also really pretty cool for plant shopping too. It just becomes so much easier. You can look at any plant's leaves or any plant really and immediately know roughly if you're going to need to water it a lot more or a lot less. And I actually do mention this in one of my videos a while ago about tips for buying new plants. I'll make sure I leave a link in the description in the show notes for you as well, and you can watch that video at any time as well. Honestly, if this thick versus thin tip thing that I've just mentioned has just changed how you think about plant care, let me know in the comments. Pop this emoji in the comments below for me if you've had one of those aha moments. I love hearing aha moments, so it makes me get up in the morning. And tell me, do you have a ZZ plant? Which variety is on your wish list? Are you Team Raven or are you Team Classic? As I said earlier, please do drop that in the comments below. And then my other ask is, if you have found this video helpful, please do smash that like button. It really does help other plant parents find this video and keeps this plant channel growing. If you want more plant problem solving tips like this, definitely subscribe because I've got so many more game-changing principles to share. I love those little tidbits, as I said, those aha moments, and I love sharing that with you guys too. That's it for today. I'm going to leave you with this video right here where I'm going to be updating and fixing all of the plants in my main dining room because honestly, they are in desperate need of attention so they can be ready for our spring coming up next month. So do make sure you watch this next video. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, have an amazing week full of leaves, love and laughter, and I will see you in the next video. See you later. Bye.